Preparing. I have to close that. So, where are you at right now?
I'm in Nashville.
Okay, Nashville. I usually guess that when I see like that's where you're at, but like recently, everybody that's been in Nashville, it's like, oh, I'm not really from Nashville, so I went back home, and
Yeah,
it's
good point. Good
yeah.
point.
So it's always fun times. Let me get this posted, and we'll be good to go.
Okay.
Mm, there it is. I was having trouble finding your page, but I found it. All right. That should be posted. I tagged your music page.
Perfect.
Okay, cool. How's the weather in Nashville right now? You guys starting to get into that lovely winter weather, or is it staying kind of warm there?
It's been kind of gray and rainy and, not exciting, but there's no snow or anything like that. So I'll take it. I'm from Washington State, so anything with little snow is a nice change.
Yeah, I gotcha. Oh, and oh yeah, guys are probably getting hit by that hurricane that just came up through Louisiana, or like the remnants of that.
Yeah.
Not that you guys need any more bad weather. Like, geez, everything you guys have had going on there this year, it's like,
Just one thing after another.
yep, absolutely. All right. So if you are ready, I've got everything posted, and we'll jump into it.
Perfect.
All right, awesome. Welcome, everybody, to another live and amplified livecast. I'm your host, Tom Quat, and we're back at it again with another amazing podcast. Today, we have a very special guest. We have Karen McCormick. How's it going today, Karen?
It's going well. It's actually Karen. I know it
Oh,
looks like
I,
Karen though.
I'm sorry. Normally, I ask, and then I was just like, nope, that's just, I'm so sorry.
No, it's okay.
Well, once again, thank you so much for jumping on the podcast. I really appreciate it. Before we kind of jump into everything, your new EP, all that fun stuff, what's kind of what's kind of your backstory? What got you into music? All that fun stuff.
So I grew up in Washington State, and when I was a kid, I would hum around the house, sing around the house, and I never really thought too much of it until my dad was like, "Hey, I think you should join the children's choir at church. I really think you would enjoy it." And I was like, "What? What are you talking about?" And he had mentioned that he noticed that I enjoyed singing around the house, and at the same time, I would have these little notebooks and I would write stories and things like that. And it wasn't until a couple of years later that I fell in love with country music that I thought to marry those two things that I really loved, which was writing and singing. And to me, that's exactly what country music is. It's literally putting stories to music. And so I really found an outlet as a kid through country music. And a couple years later, I discovered Carrie Underwood and Taylor Swift and Miranda Lambert and all these, really strong females in country. And I was like, they all went to Nashville. I've got to go to Nashville. So I started begging my dad for a guitar, and it took about a year and a half to convince him that I really wanted to do it. And he got me one, and I started writing songs right away and just kind of started counting down the days that I would come to Nashville, which would eventually happen. I moved here 2 years ago, and I've been here ever since.
Nice. And I take it you're enjoying Nashville. It's everything you thought it would be.
It is. It's a very special place. It's really unlike anywhere I've ever been to think that a town can bring people from all over the world because they just love music so much. That's a very special thing. And it's been really fun to meet people and hear their stories and hear how they fell in love with music, and not just country, but just music in general, and not just artists and songwriters, but audiences and fans as well. It's been really fun.
Yeah, absolutely. It's Nashville is like I've only been to Nashville 2, maybe 3 times. Um, and every time I go there, I feel like I know a lot more people there than I should. Like just kind of through random meetings and whatnot. Like I've run into more people that I know from Nashville outside of Nashville, which is really weird. And like Nashville, it's its own community that just kind of ends up spreading out. And so Nashville is a really special place. And so maybe one day I'll move there, but I can't quite get over the idea of the mountains and snow and ice, which is crazy because I grew up in Chicago, and it's like you'd think I'd be used to it, but growing up in Chicago is why I hate all that stuff. So, but no, that's awesome. So you just released a new EP, Retro. What's kind of the story behind that body of work?
Well, I've been wanting to put out an EP for several years, even before I moved to Nashville. And I really wanted to put something out that really felt like a body of work, and it was art and not so much just putting out music for the sake of putting out music. And it really all fell together perfectly because Nashville is the perfect place to do that. I mean, you have an endless amount of extremely talented people and collaborators. And so I started writing with people, I started meeting people, and I really was like, I want to have a combination of some songs that I wrote before I moved to Nashville and some songs of prior, like after moving to Nashville, so that I could show growth and just show like how my writing style is alone and how my writing style is as a co-writer, but at the same time really bring this cohesive piece of art together. And I was originally going to release it in 2019. I had a couple different songs originally, and it just didn't feel all the way there. And so that's kind of the beauty of being an independent artist is I can say, hey, wait a second, let's take a step back. Let's make sure that this is right.
Yeah.
And I just went back to the drawing board and went back and with my co-writers and with my producer, and that was how Heartbroken Girls got added and Bar Talk got added. And I was really happy that I made that decision because I'm extremely proud of it. And I felt like it was just a small introduction to where I'm headed artistically. And then, the pandemic happened, and that kind of threw me for a loop. And I was kind of like, how am I going to do this?
It threw everyone for a loop there.
And that kind of threw me for a loop in terms of how to release it and promote it. But I really think that, again, being an independent artist, that kind of turned into a strength in a sense, because it really allowed me to step outside of my comfort zone and do things like live streams and really connect with people more one-on-one, I think, than I previously had.
Yeah, absolutely. Was there obviously, or well, you'd mentioned that you were supposed to release this originally or wanted to in 2019 and then pushed it to 2020, and then the pandemic hit, and it's like, okay, well, there's not going to be any shows. So how do I release this? How do I promote it? Was there thoughts about maybe pushing it again to 2021, or because we just don't know the legs of COVID, we can't just keep pushing projects back? Where at what point did you kind of decide, okay, we just need to kind of pick a date and release it and just kind of figure it out?
I definitely had those conversations. I I had a release date picked for July 2020.
Mhm.
And when the pandemic happened, I was like, wait, we need to like find a way to use this to our advantage, really, which is exactly what ended up happening because I was able to do things like film music videos, which I had never done, and release some of the songs as singles that I maybe wouldn't have previously. And so I kind of got to extend the release
Mhm.
in a sense. And I had a couple options in mind. I was thinking, okay, how about early fall, September, late fall, like November, or early 2021, January, February. And we all ended up agreeing that September was the best way to go. And I absolutely agree. I couldn't be more thrilled with how everything turned out.
Yeah, absolutely. It's September's kind of like that right time. If you're going to release music before the holidays, September just kind of feels like that right time because it's like, okay, you're not everybody's like gone into full Christmas mode or Thanksgiving or whatever, but and you're still kind of got like that summer vibe and you want to be out having fun. I mean, I guess in most parts of the country you want to be out having fun. Not so much in like North Dakota or something like that. But so what kind of went into the like? So when you moved it from 2019 to 2020, you said you went back into like the writing room and started reworking some songs and stuff like that. What went into the song selection process?
It was about a month and a half to 2 months straight of just listening to music
Mhm.
and watching live performances of people that I admire, like Shania Twain and Aretha Franklin, and really figuring out what is it that I like about this music and really breaking it down. And I just really put together this huge doc and was just like, what is my sound? Do I like banjo? Do I like fiddle? Do I like keys? What are the things that I really like? And then going into the studio and being really intentional about that so that I could start to formulate what is my sound. And that's definitely still a journey that I'm on, but I really felt like taking the time to do something like that really helped me start to open that door. A song like Heartbroken Girls is definitely headed in that direction where I see my music going and where I see my imprint of country music going. And so it was really just a lot of, for lack of a better word, research
Mhm.
and educating myself, and just really honing in on why are my influences my influences.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. And you'd mentioned that co-writing was a big thing for you on this album. Was that something that was a foreign concept to you before you came to Nashville? Because co-writing seems like it's a very Nashville thing. Like I'm sure you get it like in certain sectors of the music industry, but it just feels very commonplace in Nashville. Was that something you were doing back in Washington, or did you really start experimenting with that when you got to Nashville?
I had done it a couple times in Washington, but truth be told, most of my my library had definitely been solo writes. I mean, even writing with other people in Washington, it's unlike anything in Nashville because with Nashville, it's so almost like secondhand nature. Like it's just like writing a book, reading a book, speaking English. Like it's just so it just comes so easy to people here,
Mm,
and you can meet somebody and within 5 minutes be writing a song with them. It's just it's the nature of the town, and so I definitely feel like I think my idea of co-writing before Nashville was different
mm.
than actually living in Nashville for sure.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that's one of the things that just kind of makes Nashville like a community driven and very community based is yeah, you're gonna find you're gonna find like cliques or whatever you want to call it. They're like your group of people and they're there to support you and help you and you're gonna like to write with them. And then you're gonna be in those situations where you got really good friends, but maybe you don't like to write with them just because you have creative differences on how to do things. So, that's one of the things, in my opinion, that makes Nashville special.
Absolutely.
So, um, so doing the co or so when you went back in to write, how many songs did you end up swapping when you moved it from 2019 to 2020 and went back into the writing phase? how different did the album end up looking between the 2019 version and the 2020 version?
I had swapped out 2 songs, so it wasn't a big change, but I would say in terms of sonically, I would say it was a big change.
Okay. So like, and obviously the changes were for the better. So you definitely have you feel like you have a better product now than if you would have put it out in 2019, which is, it's always interesting when that kind of happens, like something that you think is going to be like this big catastrophic issue, and then it ends up being something for the better. Like, so but one thing that I really like to talk about on the podcast are the music videos, because I'm a film guy. That's what I do. That's like what I do on my 9 to 5 job is video work. So you have a video for the title track, Retro. What was kind of the idea behind that? Like, was that, I think you'd mentioned that it wasn't originally a thought to have a music video for Retro, right? Was I understanding that correctly?
Well, because of the pandemic,
Yeah.
I had always wanted to do a music video in 2020. I just didn't know what that would look like. And then the pandemic, Nashville, just like everywhere else, shut down. And so I was like, I don't even know if people are filming music videos. How are we going to do this? Things like that. So everything kind of got thrown for a loop. But we ended up figuring it out. We had a very small team of just 4 people, and we pulled it off. And I'm so happy with how it turned out. The overall, I guess, feeling that I wanted people to take away when watching it was just happiness, just joy, just watching it and having a good vibe and a good feeling, and kind of some of those throwback styles in there as well, and playing on the word retro.
Yeah.
We kind of had solidified ideas for each location. We called the room with all the records the retro room, and I brought in some of my records that I listened to, which was like Reba and Dolly and Charlie Pride and Elvis, and kind of paying tribute to them. And we had the purple lavender room, which was inspired by a photo that I found of Aretha Franklin that I loved. And then we had, of course, the high school scene, which was very much kind of a Grease and like old school type of vibe that we wanted. And overall, I just wanted it to be really fun. It was my first video, and I really kind of wanted to introduce myself as Karen, the artist, and then hopefully the videos to come, I can kind of take a different angle and maybe play characters or things like that. But I really wanted this one to be fun and laid back.
Yeah, absolutely. And one thing I really noticed and enjoyed was where the color is bright, and like everything's very bright and fun, but it kind of has this feeling of, if we were to take like an old black and white TV show and convert it to color, like that's kind of like, does that make sense to
I
like,
love that. I love that so much. Thank you so much for saying that.
yeah, like if you were to take like an old black and white TV show and just convert it to color, just like how it's saturated and dynamic even within the like a black and white show, it kind of gives me that same feel.
That's
Like,
amazing. Oh,
I don't,
I love that so much. Thank you.
so like I was just sitting here, I'm like, I don't know. It was just a really weird, and that was the first thing I picked up on, and I'm like, okay, that's really interesting. Oh, so that's up on YouTube now. How long did you end up working, or how long did it take to kind of put the music video together?
We shot that in one day. It was about a 10.5 hour day. And it was a hot day. It was in the middle of July in Nashville. So some of those scenes, like we had to take breaks for the outdoor scenes because it was 95 degrees, and like we had to make sure that we were like not too sweaty for the cameras and things like that. And so it was kind of that made it fun at the same time because we could all kind of laugh about it. But oh my gosh, everybody was such a trooper because 90 degrees in Nashville in the middle of summer is no joke.
I was up
But it
in
was so fun.
I was up in Western Kentucky in September, and it was, even in September, it was still so hot up there, and I'm just like, so glad I don't live in Florida anymore. Like,
No kidding.
I can't do this anymore. So this is the first music video, and I'm assuming it's going to be the first of many. Like you like
I
I'm
hope
sure.
so. I'm working on another music video right now for one of the songs on the EP called Congratulations,
Mhm.
which is definitely the ballad of the EP. And I'm excited to kind of show that more emotional side. And I'm really excited because we have um, a guy and a gal who are kind of playing out the story. And so I'll just kind of be in the background singing the song, but they're really going to play out the story and they become these characters. And so that's really fun.
Hmm. Awesome, awesome. So I kind of want to take a left turn because when I was looking through your YouTube page, noticed back when you were younger, you were doing a lot of the like solo acoustic cover stuff.
Yes.
Kind of
Where are we going with this?
no. It's nothing crazy. And then you kind of took a break. Was it just kind of you didn't want to be known as like a cover artist, or was it something that you just weren't really that like as far as like doing cover songs and uploading to YouTube? Because I was just sitting there. It's like these are really good, but like if you want to be an original artist, like that's probably not something that you want to get known for. It's like, oh, you're the YouTube cover girl.
Exactly. That's exactly what happened. I started my YouTube channel because I wanted to audition for America's Got Talent.
Mm-hmm.
And I watched it when I was younger, and they would never have auditions close enough to where I lived.
Mm-hmm.
So one year they decided, hey, we're going to do YouTube auditions. And I was like, oh, yeah, this is how I'll do it. I'll start a YouTube channel. And I didn't tell anybody about it except my parents. And somebody at school found it, and it kind of just started to organically blow up just a little bit. So I started to stay consistent with it. But when I really started writing my own songs, that was where I kind of was like, yeah, I really want people to start to know my songs. And so I kind of just navigated away from that. And I would share like on Instagram little clips of either covers or mashups or little original songs. But what I found, where I found my passion in doing covers, was taking a song and either making a mashup or taking a song and kind of flipping it on its head. So if it was a hip hop song, making an acoustic version, or if it was a country song, speeding it up, or things like that. And that's where I kind of found, okay, I can still do covers and put my artistry in it. It just took a couple years for me to figure that out, but that was definitely why I took a step back from it for a while.
Okay. Because I was sitting here looking and I saw the numbers and I was like, oh, you're doing really well with them. And then started noticing, I was like, oh, they're all cover songs. I bet I know why. Oh, yeah, it's not a, but the one thing I also noticed kind of going through your social media and whatnot is that you've done a lot of work with Walker Hayes. You've played a lot, I don't, well, I'm going to say a lot of shows. Like, I don't know what a lot means to anybody anymore. Cause like to me, like 3 is a lot of shows, but, so, how did you kind of get introduced to him? And was that like a Nashville connect, or how did you kind of get introduced to him?
Well, that's ironic that we were talking about doing covers because that's exactly what happened. I did a cover of one of his songs. Um, he was on tour with Kelsey Ballerini in 2018, and he was her opener. And he had tweeted out, hey, if anybody wants meet and greets for the show tomorrow night, just post a video of you dancing or lip syncing to one of my songs. And I'm not a good dancer. So, and I was like, well, maybe I'll just post a little video of me singing one of my favorite songs of his.
Mhm.
And so I did, and he responded and he said he liked it. And I was like, wow, thanks so much for taking the time to watch it. And I didn't think too much of it until the day of the concert, about 4 hours before. He tweeted and he asked if I wanted to come sing it with him. And I was like,
Oh,
yeah,
yeah.
and it just kind of took this turn that I never would have anticipated. And, subsequently I ended up doing 4 shows with him, and he's incredible. He's very kind.
Awesome. Awesome. That was really cool. Yeah. I saw a few different posts and I was just like, and how long ago was that? Did that kind of,
We did 2 shows in 2018 and then 2 shows in 2019. And then a couple of weeks ago, I sang with him in Memphis.
okay. Was that the Waffle House thing that I saw? I
Yeah.
saw him wearing a Waffle House t-shirt or a sweater. And I'm like, did you guys just play at a Waffle House? Like, I mean, I guess that would be a very south, like a central, it's not central US, but like whatever, not Tennessee, Kentucky thing to happen, but Waffle House, you never know. No, that's really cool. So during the pandemic, obviously there haven't been a lot of shows. It sounds like you've still been able to do a few shows, but how often are you playing when there isn't a global pandemic, I guess?
That's a great question. I don't even know if I remember anymore. It's been so long, I feel like. Especially in Washington, I was at one point having a show almost every single weekend.
Okay.
And in Nashville, it's easy to bump that up to, 2 to 3 times a week. It's just a different style of show. You have your writers' rounds, or you'll do like a thing where you'll share a set with somebody, like I'll do an hour and you'll do an hour and we'll do a show together type of thing. So it's very different than in Washington where you book, 3 hours straight, just you. But it definitely was amplified before the pandemic of doing it, 2 to 3 times a week to maybe once every 6 months. I mean, it's been crazy, but I'm hoping that 2021 and 2022 will look significantly different. I hope. I'm optimistic.
Hopefully. And I don't know what it's looking like in Nashville, but I know like some of the smaller venues here in Texas, they're starting to open up and you're seeing half capacity shows or some outdoor shows, which is really interesting. Like, especially for the smaller venues, the outdoor shows are probably the better way to go, because if you try and do half capacity of a 30 capacity room, like you bring a group in, it's like, okay, well, we're done. 10 people, we're good. But so it's very promising, but unfortunately the situation is now you've got every musician fighting for all those smaller spots. So it's like if one of the big names from Dallas or Austin want a show here in Waco, they probably don't have to fight as hard for it, because it's just like, oh, so and so wants, it just kind of is what it is at this point. But no, it's really cool that you've been able to get a couple of shows, and that you'd also mentioned you've been doing the virtual live streaming. Was that something that you had been doing before the pandemic, like live streaming shows, or was that really just a pandemic, I need to continue to play?
It was definitely the pandemic. Absolutely. I mean, there's nothing like playing to a room full of people versus playing to my empty living room. But I noticed and would read comments of people saying, hey, I'm at home, with my partner and we're hanging out on the couch watching you, and this turned our Friday around, or things like that. And I just found that it was completely worth it. And it's a way to, really interact with people in a way that you could have, in person, but it is different when everybody is kind of holed up at their house and you feel like, oh, I have this connection with somebody. It's very similar to when you're FaceTiming somebody. It's nothing like texting them. So it was really out of my comfort zone at first. I don't even want to like go back and watch my first one, but I'm definitely more comfortable with it now. I've like gone through the bumps and things like that.
Please tell me, really on your first live stream, you had at least within the first couple of songs, you had the awkward, I don't know how to transition out of the song without an applause.
Well, it's always just awkward when you finish the song and you're like, and that was, and you're just like, hey, that was this song, and things like that. But then after a while, it really does feel like you're just hanging out. And if you just don't take yourself too seriously, you find that it's really fun.
Yeah, absolutely. That was back when the pandemic first started. We did a few like virtual concerts where we'd bring people in and they do shows, and I'd sit there and watch them. And like the first couple of songs, it would be like they just let that last note ring out just as long as they can, and then there'd be this really awkward pause, and it's like, I'm not quite sure how to transition. Do I just kind of continue playing? What do I do? And it's like, I'll just pretend like you're playing pretend like you're playing that empty coffee shop show.
Exactly.
This one. I've seen plenty of people kind of handle it different. They'll have either their partner, or if they live with like roommates, the roommates will be sitting off on the side, and there'll be like the little half-hearted applause. Well, not half-hearted, but like the little applause on the
The
side of
golf
the,
clap, just
yeah. And it's just kind of like, that's very funny. But I've had this idea that I've thought musicians, I'm kind of surprised I haven't started doing. I've seen comedians starting to do it, like Zoom shows like this, where they'll sell tickets, because like when you came in, you got put into a waiting room. So like there's a way you could do that, and then like just kind of verify that they actually bought a ticket or whatever.
oh, that's awesome.
And so like they come in and do like a virtual stand-up show, and so like they can feed off the laugh of the audience and all that stuff. And I was like, I'm kind of surprised that musicians haven't started doing that, just kind of like as a, like still a virtual show, and it's not quite as good, and I'm sure you're gonna have that one guy that gets the phone call in the middle of the thing, and you're gonna just hear the ring, ring. But it's just one of those things where it's like, kind of surprised we haven't seen that happen a little bit more.
Yeah, I actually have attended, a friend of mine did one of those, and I really enjoyed it. It was really fun. There is something to be said about, as an audience member, even though if it was on Facebook, it may have been the exact same show, but since I paid for it, I felt like, oh, this is exclusive, and I got to hear songs that she had never released before, and she really told the stories behind them, and it was really fun. So I think if 2021 is similar to 2020, which I hope not, I think we will see more of that.
Yeah, it's gonna get to a point where I don't want to say evolution is going to take over, but just the need to perform is going to take over, and people are going to just find a way to make it work. So
Definitely.
it'll be
I mean,
really,
there's been so many drive-in shows,
yeah,
and at first that was like, what? And now it's like becoming a thing.
yeah.
So
Well, and now it's getting to the point where I can't tell what's real and what's fake. Like I can't, like, yeah. So like the drive-in shows, I thought I saw it on the Onion at one point. Like I would have sworn it popped up on the Onion at one point. I was like, oh, ha ha, they're making it funny. And then no, people really started doing it, and I'm like, okay, now I don't know what's real and what's fake anymore. And there was like this one thing that popped up at one point about people doing isolation bubbles at raves or something. I was like, I don't know anymore. Like I'm so confused. But um so you're about a month after the release of Retro. What's kind of going through your head right now that you're starting to see some of the results? Like what have you kind of learned about yourself from this process?
Oh, that's a great question. I've learned to trust my instincts. I've learned to also not think that I know everything, because, I thought that one song would be everybody's favorite, and it ended up being a completely different song. So you can't speak for the audience. The audience will definitely let you know how they're connecting. But I also am very happy that I trusted my gut in pushing it back and making those changes in terms of the tracks that we went with. But I'm also, post release mode is interesting, because as the artist, you are excited about everything 6 months, 9 months, a year in advance. And then you get all the excitement, and it's kind of just you and your co-writers. Then you release it, you kind of get to live it up again. But it's also very much a feeling of, it's out there for everybody to enjoy who wants to enjoy. And I'm already thinking about the next thing that I'm going to do. And I'm in talks with new producers and just trying to figure out what's next, and really solidifying what my sound is. Because if you listen to country, I think on the surface, everybody thinks it sounds the same, but if you break it down, it really doesn't. And so I really want to figure out, what my stamp on country music will be. And so that's what I'm focused on for 2021.
Yeah, absolutely. And you got to really find out what's authentic to you, because you'll see a lot in the music industry that the people that have longevity are the ones that remain authentic to them. Like, yeah, they'll probably venture outside their comfort and just to kind of experiment and what have you, but they'll always return to what's authentic to them.
Exactly. And those are the ones that, like you said, we see stay in the long game. And not just that, but they tend to have massive crossover success, global success, because they reach such a large audience with their authenticity. And it's wonderful to see.
Yeah, absolutely. So now that the EP's been released for about a month, where are you at creatively right now? Are you one of those artists that are just kind of always writing, or do you like to take breaks from writing? Like where are you kind of at creatively right now?
I am writing again because I do want to release music next year, but typically I do take breaks.
Mm.
When I first moved to Nashville, I felt a lot of pressure to be writing a new song, almost every single day or once a week. And that's just not how I operate as a writer.
Mm.
And I found that moving to Nashville actually made it more of a challenge to write alone because you're so used to writing with other people. So what I really want to do is take a break from co-writing a lot
Yeah.
and really, find myself as a solo writer again, while also branching out and working with other co-writers as well, and just kind of pushing myself creatively and artistically.
Yeah, absolutely. What's kind of your process when you sit down to write? Are you very methodical? Like, can you say, okay, today from 7 p.m. to 9 p.m., I'm going to sit down and write? Or are you very sporadic and like, oh, I have an idea for this. I need to like remember this and write? Like, how do you kind of process your creativity and what's kind of your yeah.
It's kind of different with co-writing and with solo writing. My solo writing is very sporadic, like you said. I'll get an idea at 2 in the morning, have it in my phone, then write it down, and I'm like, okay, I can't go back to sleep. Like I need to play on this, and then I'll revisit it the next day.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas co-writing, I definitely am the type of co-writer that brings in ideas and a story, and I say, I have this song title, and here's a blurb of what I'm thinking. I basically kind of tell the story, and I think, how can we now put lyrics and music to it? Because I've always been a storyteller. I've never been somebody that solo writing can sit down and be like, okay, I'm going to write today. But co-writing kind of forces me to do that. So it kind of uses a different part of my brain where I can say, okay, today I have a write at 2 and we're going to write this song, hopefully finish it. If not, that's totally fine.
Yeah.
So it's a little bit different for both. I think for co-writing, I'm very structured. And then for solo writing, it's just like, whatever.
Yeah, whatever. I got you. It's always very interesting to kind of see the differences amongst artists because I know a lot of musicians that are very structured, and it's like, and you'll see as it gets like, it's usually with like the older crowd where they have like kids or they have, they have like a set routine they have to do, and it's like, well, I got to make sure the kids are in bed by 8, and that's when I can start writing, and so like they're very structured in that way, but you also got a lot of artists where it's like they'll be driving doing 90 down the freeway and it's like I got an idea for a song. Let me figure out how to keep this in my head without crap. So,
Definitely. I would say most of my ideas happen when I'm driving in the car, to be honest. I think it's because that's the one place where I really let my brain kind of just shut off from everything else because I'm focused on the road, obviously. And so all the ideas just kind of rush in. I mean, that's how Heartbroken Girls came to be. I was driving on Interstate 24 and I had this idea.
that's the one thing that I miss about living in New Mexico. I lived in New Mexico for about 4 years, and when I'd have to travel back and forth, I lived in Roswell. When I'd have to travel up to Albuquerque, it's like 3 hours, and like an hour and a half of it, you're out in the middle of nowhere, no cell signal, no radio, like nothing. And I really missed that drive because it was like I couldn't listen well, unless I had songs downloaded on my phone. I had nothing to listen to. I couldn't get podcasts to play, nothing like that. And it was just like an hour and a half where it's like, okay, let's see what my brain thinks of or what my brain just does naturally on its own. And now that I don't live in New Mexico, it's just kind of like, oh, I kind of miss it now. you know,
Yeah, definitely.
because that's where like the idea for live and amplified kind of came. That's where like just like all the randomness that I've come up with, it's just like, yeah, they probably came up while I was driving between Albuquerque and Roswell. So, you know, um, but what have you away from music? What do you do for like? I don't want to say for fun because for a lot of people, music is fun. But what away from music, what do you kind of do to relax or you know?
Unwind,
Yeah,
kick
there you go. Yeah,
back.
there you go.
Um,
That's a lot better word.
I love spending time with my family. They are all in Washington, so it's a little bit more of a challenge, but because of the pandemic, I was able to spend 2 months with them this year, which never would have happened,
Yeah.
aside from the pandemic. So that's always fun. I love baking. I'm not very good at it, but I find that it's really fun to try new recipes and attempt to make it look pretty. At the end of the day, all that matters is that it tastes good.
Yep.
But I love baking. I love the outdoors. Growing up in Washington, we spent a lot of time outdoors. So here in Tennessee, I do love to go out on drives and find new places to go on walks or hikes or things like that. And I also just love binging out on Netflix, of course,
What's your
which the
favorite?
pandemic has afforded a lot of prime time to do.
What's your favorite show on Netflix right now?
On Netflix, I would say The Office. I'm trying to take advantage of these last couple weeks that it will be on Netflix because I heard it's leaving and I'm so sad.
Yeah.
But I also have been watching Schitt's Creek and I really love that one as well.
Gotcha. See, a lot of the stuff I watch on Netflix is like short series, so it's like 3 to 8 episodes, and then it's just kind of done. And I'm like, that's cool, but it doesn't give me a lot of like, oh, I like if I sit down and binge it in a matter of a day, it's just like, okay, well, that was fun, you know. I've been trying to finish Ozark.
Oh yeah,
That's
I've heard great things about that one.
yeah. I'm kind of stuck in the middle of season 3 because like when I was up, I mentioned earlier that I was visiting family up in Western Kentucky, and my dad was like, "Have you ever seen that show Ozark?" And I'm like, "No." He's like, "We got to watch it right now. You're missing out." And I'm like, "Dad, we're on vacation, and you want to sit down and watch Ozark right now?" He's like, "We're not going anywhere. We're all drunk. Let's watch it." And I'm like, all right. And so he turns on the first season. Within 10 minutes, he's dead asleep. And so I'm just kind of like, okay. And yeah. So it was just like this weird thing. And so, like, it caught my attention. I came back to Central Texas and I was just kind of like, okay, well, I guess I'm going to continue to watch Ozark. And then I got to like season 3, and season 3 got really weird at one point. And I'm like, all right, I'm kind of cool now, but like I'm halfway through, but I'm kind of at that point where I probably need to go back and watch the beginning of season 3 for, you know,
Right.
so it's just kind of like, I don't really want to do that, but I'm trying to finish Ozark. So, but, um, how often do you, well, you said you got to spend about 2 months in Washington with your family due to the pandemic, but normally before that, how often do you usually go back?
I try to go back 2 to 3 times a year, one time in the winter and one time in the spring. My father's birthday is in February, so I try to plan a trip around there and always make it so that I'm hopefully doing a couple shows at the same time. And I like to go for extended stays rather than just a couple days because it is so far away. It's an all day flight to get
Yeah.
there and it's a 23-hour drive. So
Yeah.
I really try to make it worth my while, which it always is because I love my family so much. But then this year, I actually was in Washington at the beginning of March
Mhm.
because I had some shows lined up. And while I was there was when everybody started going on lockdowns. And I had bought a one-way ticket because I was like, I don't know where this is headed. So
Yeah.
it was smart because then I was like, okay, I'm here. I guess I'm
Yeah.
staying here for a while.
Yeah.
And I recently went back in September, which was really fun as well. Washington in September is just so gorgeous.
Nice.
So that was a fun visit as well.
Nice. Washington is one of the places that I've tried twice to go to and have not made it. Like I was doing last summer, I did a trip with my production team where we do a bunch of like acoustic videos with solo like musicians. And it was like, okay, so we're gonna go up to Utah, we're gonna go to Montana, and we can either keep going north, like northwest, and go up to Washington, go to like Seattle or something, or we can go south and go to LA. And I at some point I got overruled, and it's like two of my guys had never been to Vegas, and they wanted to go to Vegas. And I was like, well, if we're going to Vegas, we're gonna go to LA because going back up to Seattle doesn't make any sense after that. And then we ended up not going anywhere after Montana because Hurricane Barry started to approach, because I was living in Florida at the time. You'll realize that I move a lot. Like I don't like in one place for very too long. But Washington has always had, Seattle specifically has always kind of piqued my interest as a place to possibly move to. But the weather again, I'm sure it's not that bad, but you could kind of correct me on that. But like just weather always scares me. It's like I don't want to have to deal with snow. Rain I can handle, but snow, that's a big no.
Yeah, I don't miss the Washington winters, that last like 2 or 3 or 4 months. I
Mhm.
do miss snow. I do miss having 4 solidified seasons. I do feel
Yeah,
like in Tennessee, it kind of feels like, whoa, wait a second, what month are we in? Like,
yeah,
what time of year is it?
yeah.
Which I'm not really used to as much. So I do kind of like miss the experience of the snow, but I don't miss driving in it or anything like that.
Yeah. Yep. And it's always funny, like especially when you're in a place that isn't used to having a lot of snow, that one time that you get a lot of snow and
And
then just
everybody freaks out.
yep. My buddy still lives out in Roswell, and they just got a foot of snow on Monday.
Oh,
And
wow.
it had rained like the day before, so like the rain froze and then the snow on top of it. And I'm like, yeah, that would scare any driver. Like that's bad
Yes,
range.
definitely.
He's like, "Oh, I know. I'm from Boston. I'm very aware." And I'm like, "Yeah, it's that's just a bad situation all around. Like, not yeah." But um, so I don't want to keep you too much longer, but I really appreciate you kind of giving me the time to sit down and chat. Um, what's keeping you kind of motivated through, like, with everything that's going on right now? What's kind of keeping you motivated in the music business?
Oh, that's a great question. I think it's a combination of my just love for music. I don't think that I could live without it, as corny as that may sound. And I feel like through a time like this, that has definitely given me even more of a wake up call that doing this project, doing this EP really got me through, these past 7, 8 months, because I had something to look forward to. And it was like my light, through such a time of darkness. And at the
Mhm.
same time, getting messages from people that say like, I really love this song, or I'm going through something that's kind of like this, that always keeps me motivated, that always keeps me going. And um, in the short term, the idea of performing for people again is definitely what's keeping me motivated, because I'm
Yeah.
like, it's going to happen again at some
Yeah.
point. I'm optimistic that it will, hopefully sooner rather than later. But really, it's just the thing that I love most in the world.
Gotcha. Do you have any shows on the books right now, or is it all like virtual stuff?
I do have 2 shows planned in Tennessee later this month. One's in Red Boiling Springs. I believe that's November 21st. And then one is in Pleasant View, Tennessee, November 27th, which will be fun. They're both just small towns. And I really do enjoy, my favorite type of show is in a small town, because I
Mhm.
love just that community vibe that you have when you go. Um, as well as like fairs and festivals are also my favorite, but I'm excited for those.
Yes. A show on Black Friday. That's interesting.
I
Yeah,
know. We realized, because the show booker and I were both like, "Oh, that's Black Friday,"
yeah,
and I was like, "Should we still do it?" And he's like, "We'll see what happens."
yeah. At least it's not. Oh, the Wednesday before, they call that Blackout Friday, and it's like I remember like being in college and stuff. That Wednesday before Thanksgiving, everybody just got belligerently drunk and all kinds of craziness. So like being out on that night is just kind of like, not anymore. I'm good. So, but once again, thank you so much. Where can everybody find you online? Where can they find your music? All that fun stuff.
Yeah, you can head to my website, which is Karen, spelled like Karen, Karen, McCormickmusic.com. That's where you'll find show updates, all, pictures, all that fun stuff. And if you want to hear the EP, you can hear it on just about any of the digital retail streaming platforms: iTunes, Apple Music, Spotify, Pandora, you name it, it's there. Just look up Karen McCormick Retro.
Yeah, absolutely. Have you had thoughts about pressing vinyl or anything for retro?
I was thinking about doing some CDs.
Okay.
That was before we had a pandemic. Like, I would love to sell CDs in person. Wouldn't that be so fun? And then we weren't able to hang out with people. So we'll see what 2021 looks like.
Okay.
We'll also see, what music I release in 2021, because that might end up being pressed on vinyl. So we'll see what happens.
Because I mean, for an album like retro, going vinyl might be really cool and make a
I
lot of sense.
know. Wouldn't that be so fun?
Yeah. The crazy thing is cassettes are making a comeback. Like it is the worst format to listen to music, but it's just so funny. Like people are selling cassette tapes right now. It's just why. But Karen, thank you so much for jumping out. I really appreciate it. I had to say your name at least one more time so I could prove that I could say your name correctly. At
Thank
least
you.
I didn't butcher the last name. Like usually that's where I mess up is the last name, and then it's just like, nope, you mispronounced the first name.
No
I'm like,
worries at all. No
oh.
worries.
But
Thank you so much for having me, Tom. It's been a pleasure.
absolutely. Once again, thank you so much for joining us.